Anybody want a drink? Yeah, this old well works pretty well. Well and pump, and the windmill too. We're standing under my windmill. If you've been watching any of my videos, you know that I have a windmill, and I've done quite a few videos about the windmill. Yeah, it works perfectly. This is a Beatty pumper made by the Beatty Brothers Company from Fergus, Ontario, Canada. The Beatty windmills were all over North America. Very, very famous, big company. Their windmills were extremely well made, a little more stronger, a little more sophisticated than most of the many manufacturers in the early 1900s. This mill is from about 1915, 1920, somewhere in there, and I have a complete, all original Beatty pumper, pump standard. The pump underneath, it's a three-way, so I can have water coming out of the spout. Or anyway, you can watch my other videos if you have more interest in that. We've had a problem with this windmill. I mean, the windmill works great, the pump works great, but there's one weak point in these windmills, and that is that the fan spins, the engine, it's called the engine, turns that spinning action into a pumping action, and then that pumping action is connected to the pump here to make the water come out. Yeah, a very simple concept. It's connected by way of a long wooden rod. Many windmills were anywhere from 20, 35, maybe 40 feet was considered a fairly tall windmill. In those days, they had taller ones, but 40 feet was pretty tall. This is 52 feet. Yeah, it's 50 feet. I wanted a nice big tall one, so all the neighbors were on a hill, they could see from out. Anyway, so it's quite long. So that means that the rod is very long. That's right. I usually need to have at least 3 pieces of rod. The rod is typically a 2x2, ordinary 2x2 piece of lumber. But the problem is, even if it was sealed, it would start to warp and bend, and the windmill's going up and down, break, and the joint. It's been an ongoing bit of an issue with me. So a little while ago, we had a problem. I decided I would try to solve that problem. I phoned around, I spoke to some of my experts, my friends, and phoned a lot of places. What's the best wood to use for a windmill pump rod? And I got various. Somebody said Douglas fir. We don't have Douglas fir in Ontario. That's from over there somewhere. And somebody said ash. We got lots of ash, but I've already tried that. Somebody said cedar. Cedar, that's soft. Yeah? Anyway, I was having a bit of an... I called my friend Harvey, who is an expert on windmills, not just Beatty pumpers. And Harvey knows windmills. He's an old guy, even older than me. That's old. And I called him, and we chatted about it for a minute. So he says to me, I should tell you the whole story, actually. I was talking about this problem with my wife, and she says, why don't you use chain? Well, chain? I laughed. I actually laughed. I said, chain won't work, sweetheart. A chain is great for pulling, but you can't push a chain. You can't push a chain, and you got to pull, then you got to push it down. And so I laughed at her. But anyway, so I called Harvey, and we discussed the wood and all kinds of things. So after a few minutes, she says, well, why don't you use chain? Well, fortunately, Diana wasn't listening. She would have had a good laugh. But anyway, she used chain. So I said to him, well, Harvey, a chain, I can use chain. I was wrong. It'll pull the pump up. but how do I get it to go back down? He says, well, put a weight on it. He says, that's what the Mennonites do around here. They have a chain, and they put a nice big weight on the top of it. So I did it. I went and got a piece of galvanized chain, not expensive. And I got this weight. This is actually a windmill weight, not for this specific purpose. This is actually for a regulator, which we'll talk about in the future. This is a weight. I'm going to make a nice weight that'll fasten onto here and paint it green and everything else. And then, so now when I want the windmill, I just take my clip here and I clip it on, spin the windmill, ba-ba-ba-boo. It pulls, the chain pulls right up there. And then as it comes around, the weight pulls them up. It works beautifully. Yeah. So I did eventually, I had no choice. I did eventually show Diana the chain. And I said to her, you know, sweetheart, you had a great idea. I said, I had to modify it a little bit to make it work. Anyway, we have a good time. And there you go. So rather than that wooden pump rod that you've seen on my windmill previously, and that you've seen on most windmills, in fact, everyone I've ever seen, I have never seen a chain before. We now have a chain on the windmill, and it's beautiful. It works beautifully, yeah? It's flexible. I don't even have any guides on it. It just hangs down there and swings down there. I want to take the windmill off. I pull the pin, hangs out of the way, pump the water. I want to put the windmill on. I slide it. It works beautifully. thought I'd share that with you guys that have an interest in old windmills. I don't know if any of you have maybe heard of using a chain for a pull rod, but there's an interesting idea. You want to take a look at that up there, Kevin? I can't spin the windmill, unfortunately. There's no wind today, Kevin. But it's pretty straightforward and pretty neat idea. I was surprised, amazing. I've had this windmill for 40 years and I still learn things about it. It's pretty neat. Anyway, there you go. Use a chain on your windmill, might save some problems. Alec Peirce at the ranch.